Oh, hi folks. Hope you're well. It's Friday, and yeah, the 22nd, I think, without my glasses on. Um, a long week, quite frankly. Yeah, I know every week's the same, but it's our perception, isn't it? It's a deception, as David Icke says. Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, even now, I go into. I thought about trying to analyze my dreams. Um, there's lots of symbolism in dreams. And the average adult, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, dreams in short segments. We don't have long, if you sleep for 6 hours, you don't dream for 6 hours. You truly don't. Um, you will dream in snippets. And the average people apparently dream no more than couple of hours tops, absolute tops, but cut up into little, take two, and the next one, take three, and we end up with this mishmash because during our sleep period it isn't all dreaming. There's a lot of repairs, there's a lot of maintenance going on. The only people it is proven not to dream, whom don't dream, generally are those exhibiting psychotic behavior, the psychopaths, sadists and psychopaths. They tend not to dream. They cannot ever recall dreaming, which is rather disturbing, isn't it? But the average people then don't dream more than about an hour and a half to two maximum. Even that's a bit debatable. And I found when I was younger, I used to be able to recall my dreams very clearly, and sometimes they're a little bit too clear. We've all had bad dreams, but they're stuffed full of symbolism. And it is our interpretation of that symbolism that can decipher what our body is trying to tell us. And there's plenty of videos about analysing your dreams and techniques. And in America, of course, you can do a diploma. Yes, of course you can, of dream interpretation, only in America. Well, come on. But it is interesting because I've often wondered, what do my dreams say? What are they trying to tell me? What is my subconscious trying to tell me? Dreams can pat us on the back as well as rip us apart, quite frankly, and they can scream at us what's needed. The subconscious knows what we need more than the conscious, because we damage ourselves so much subconsciously. I suppose it's the subconscious way of getting back at us to say, for God's sake, pack it in, will you? It's really pissing me off and it's really annoying me. If you do it again, there'll be consequences, and there very often are consequences, because the body starts to protest. So do take note on what you dream. A lot of people go to their beds with a pen and paper next to their beds because they're a little bit like remembering your dreams. You'll find that the dreams that you have closer to you waking up are obviously easier to remember because they seem to fade away in the fog of time. So the first set of dreams you have, your episode 1, episode 3, blah, blah, blah. Episode 1 and 2 that you had as you got into the deep sleep, they probably paling into insignificance by the new fresh batch that's coming. It's a bit like fast forwarding a video set, a bit like what I did with Breaking Bad. I had to get fast forwarding and then by the time I did that, I missed a lot of the plot, the groundwork, the early chapters, if you like, because I was too impatient to see. That's just my nature. According to my wife, I've always been premature. I have been premature. I don't quite grasp that one, really, and nor does she, often. But yes, I've tried interpreting my dreams, and abysmal failure, quite frankly. But I watched this video last night about this Yank teaching people in the audience how to interpret their dreams. I was absolutely fascinated for a complete hour. If I can find the link, I promise you I'll put it up. It's worth looking at. But apart from daydreaming, I don't know if you've ever heard of a man called Walter Mitty. It was a book we had to read during O-level English literature, quite frankly. And it was a lovely book because we are all Walter Mittys to some degree. And Walter Mitty was a man who was basically in a real mundane job. And he hated it, and he used to daydream his way through his work because it was so tedious, and escape into another world where he was not exactly Superman, but he was the man he really wanted to be. And it talks about the stories, what he did in the day that he really wanted to be, him, his real persona, compared to the one he was having to be. Because we've all got this dichotomy going on in our heads. I don't think I've met anybody truly who loves their job. They don't. They might think they do, but at the end of the day, does their boss love them? You know, if they love it, they will do it for nothing. You do it for nothing? Oh no, I've got bills to pay. So we're all prostitutes to some degree, aren't we? We trade our abilities and our skill sets for money. No different to anyone else, so let us not judge one another for what we do for a living. Because, well, as I said before, there's no such thing as a free lunch unless you happen to be an immigrant. Yes. Well, I often did a Walter Mitty in my own mind, of course, and I'm quite happy to confess it here to my friends. I was always fascinated by an actor called Edward Fox, quite frankly. Now, I don't know if you know Edward Fox. He was the main character star in The Day of the Jackal, the 70s, I think it was the 70s film where de Gaulle was the target of an assassin, and the French underground, if you like, the Resistance, wanted to knock off President de Gaulle because he pissed the British establishment off, don't you know? He wouldn't sign a treaty for Britain. Get this, de Gaulle would not sign the treaty allowing Britain to be part of Europe. He was totally against it because de Gaulle didn't like the British. And he had to go, you know. Well, there were certain groups of people, I dare say MI5, MI6, etc., underground, who hired an assassin. And this was our man, Edward Fox, the actor, who, I give you my word, was the spitting image of my father. My father often got stopped asking for autographs because he was absolutely the spitting image of Edward Fox. There we are. And I really didn't grasp that until I was older and checked out Edward Fox, The Day of the Jackal, this film. I got it on, I remember those horrible things called videos. And I thought, my God, that looks like my dad. And it clicked. It could have been so easily. My father would have been mistaken many a time for that man. But there's no reason why I have an affinity for him except that I liked the film. And I latched on. I wasn't sure whether it was because Edward Fox looked like my father, but I liked the story because Edward Fox was, in the character portrayed, a loner. And, well, frankly, I'm a loner. I can count the number of friends I have throughout my life on that. And I mean that. You know. And they tend not to change. I've had these friends most of my life, a couple of new ones, relatively new, 3 to 5 years, but the rest I've had for a long time. But I don't accumulate friends. I know a lot of acquaintances, if you like, but friends, well, what's the point of having too many friends? And we stay in close contact, but not so regularly, but it's always nice to speak to one another. But I prefer to speak to them when I've got something fresh to say to them. Do I need friends? Well, my best friend is my wife, quite frankly, and my children. Then come my brothers. They're not included in those 5. Okay, because if you haven't got a friend in your wife or husband or partner, you're in trouble, my old son. You need to do some introspection and wonder what you're doing. So here I was looking at The Day of the Jackal. I've probably seen the film 5 or 6 times and I never get bored with it. Only eventually, latterly, because it reminds me of my father who passed away. It's almost like watching my father. Anyway, sorry to get so personal. So there's me, and I'm thinking, well, I do have a job which I enjoy very much, strangely enough. It's the only time really I've really enjoyed my job, and I'm 57 years old. I actually like doing now, for a change, doing what I want to do for me with no boss. And everybody should give it a go. But they do say a man who has himself as a boss is a fool. Well, I don't agree. I really don't. Now I've tasted true self-employment. I don't think I could actually go back to being bossed around by an imbecile with a title. But many of us wish to escape our jobs, as I did. And we then fantasize about what we would do. Well, do you know what I would do, as though you're interested? I would be an absolute best of the best of the best I could be assassin. I mean that. I have no problem, none, I give you my word, no problem in assassinating someone who deserves it. Am I a natural born killer? No, absolutely not. Could I kill? Yes, without a doubt. It would mean nothing to me. Is that psychopathic? I doubt it. Psychopaths kill for their own pleasure. And it's a little bit like a cat. They're the only psychopathic animal I know. They will torture a victim before killing it, but they love the thrill of hurting the animal to the extreme, getting the adrenaline rushing. And yes, a cat will very rarely let a creature go when it's been playing with it. It'll kill it and simply walk away instead of leaving it alone. That's why I'm not a great fan of cats, because I think they're psychopathic creatures. Most animals will kill for protecting their young or their territory, or they are hungry and they will eat the prey. Cats are a little bit different. I think they're the only species on the world that kill for fun and amusement, because they can. Me, well, in my fantasy world, I wouldn't take any commission given to me just for the money. There has to be more in it than the money. I would probably have to want to do it for nothing for a start, in the sense that the target, which I should remain indifferent about, matters not to me. The target, well, it matters a lot. Does the person deserve assassinating? Has to be the question. Have they committed crimes against children? Are they paedophiles? Are they psychosexual perverts? Are they politicians? Oh yes, that's a big one. Well, it goes unsaid, quite frankly, doesn't it, that they do fall into the aforementioned category quite a lot. Kenneth Clark, Leon Britton, pop stars, Cliff Richard, high fans, he likes the young ones, Gary Glitter, Jimmy Savile. Well, these are the people I would have absolutely no hesitation in sticking a bullet in. Quite frankly, I have no affinity. I wouldn't classify them in the same category as human beings, knowing what they do and where they get their kicks, and it's not on Route 66. So I do drift into this. And even today, I daydream. Even today, I recollect the thrill that must go through someone's veins as they are lining up the shot, with the absolute certainty that you're going to get away with it through careful planning, meticulous planning. You've got the best gear in the world. You've got one of the greatest, most accurate guns. You are a master marksman. This is all going in my head. There's no way I'm going to get caught, because I would be, if I were an assassin, so incredibly pedantic about the smallest detail. And I would be in no particular rush. Well, as you know, the day of the Jackal, he was going to assassinate de Gaulle on a very famous French holiday. And he was working to a timetable, so he was rushed. He also had his cover blown a couple of times by being a little bit indiscreet with Percy Pegger and getting himself involved in having to murder a couple of people he didn't really want to murder to cover his identity. But the Jackal was a master of disguises, wasn't it? If you've seen the film, you'll remember it. I hate to remind you what you already know. Many people haven't. I'd recommend you watch The Day of the Jackal with Edward Fox. I'm sure it's cheap as chips in any DVD shop or online somewhere. Fascinating film. And the idea was that he was going to use one bullet, and that bullet in this superbly made gun would fire. Within the bullet, it was hollowed out and filled with a small quantity of liquid mercury. Well, it would be liquid mercury, and sealed. And the idea with that, then, if you fire that bullet at a head, the bullet would meet resistance, but the mercury would carry on and explode out the tip of the bullet, and de Gaulle's head was going to go like a melon. Poof, like that, or like that. Could have been like that. But can you imagine if he'd been successful? The spectacle of de Gaulle's head just going poof. He wouldn't have seen it coming, that's for sure. Yeah. And I thought it has got to be the perfect assassination, because his gun was practically silent, Edward Fox's gun. The first time he took a shot, de Gaulle bowed and shook somebody's head, and the bullet went straight past his head. Lucky. And then obviously the Jackal had to reload, but during the reloading time, somebody noticed a window open above where de Gaulle was and thought, hang on a minute. And by the time that Jackal had set himself up for another shot, of course, he got busted and caught. But I'm possibly ruined the film for you now, but it's worth watching. Looking at the preparation that is required, and the meticulous preparation that is required for such an act. Because if I were an assassin, I would not want to be caught. I wouldn't be taken alive. Absolutely not. You know? Because dying ain't no way to make a living, as they say in the films. I would want to be, in my fantasy, a successful assassin, and I would have no compulsion. None. I would do it. If the target was right, if my skill set was right, and here's the other bit, if I had the balls. Because there's plenty of people on my radar in the world of politics and religion, two of the biggest cons of the 20th century, well, in history, the two of the biggest cons in history is religion and politics. Poly means many and ticks means parasites. Well, that pretty much sums them up, doesn't it? And religion, kiddie fiddlers united. That's about the sum of it. All religions, it doesn't matter which one you choose, they're all the same. It's just that we're too stupid to realise it. And maybe during our dreams we're being told this all the time and time again, because the subconscious doesn't lie. You see, we only see less than 5% of what really is going on around us in our lives. I've said before, we look but we don't see. We hear but we don't listen. And so many people use their mouth twice as much as their ears and are totally inverted in that idea. So I do have to find some periods of sanity in this mad world of daydreaming, and I love daydreaming. It's a pure form of for me, of escapism. The great fun about daydreaming, of course, is that nobody really knows you're doing it if you're physically active. You could be daydreaming because we can go on autopilot. It's like the people who work for Amazon, the packers. They are working their ass off, just packing, and they can do it without thinking and have a conversation while they're doing it. You know, I know robots do a lot of it now, but in the old days, it's a bit like working on a production line. You're just a robot. Well, I don't want to be just a robot. But if you are in a mundane job, daydreaming is fantastic escapism. Whatever it takes, you see, to get you through the day. What a sad testament to our society, isn't it? Eh? I've just got to get through the day. And then another day and another day. And you realise when you look back in anger when you're old, you say, I got through every day. I used my life one day at a time, sweet Jesus. And every day I wished away. Isn't that a tragedy? Very few of us ever live to our true potential. We think, as I used to, when I used to get berated of my father for my mother, and the piss taken from me for my brothers. Why didn't you get an A? You got a B, you didn't get an A. Story of my life. Because I knew I could get an A. And a B was good enough. It was good enough for me. I don't care if it's good enough for them. It doesn't matter, you see. Because a horse wins a race by a millimetre on a photo finish. A horse can win a race with just a millimetre's nose past that fence, that tape, that camera. It doesn't have to be a whole better horse better, does it? All this nonsense about did you get a 2-1 or a 1 or a 2-2. Does it matter? You still do the same job as me, sucker. No. We've got to stop comparing our lives with others and be content with the one we have. And if we're not, figure out why you're not happy. And be prepared to do something about it. As Shakespeare said, if your eye offends thee, pull it out. If you're stuck with some prick in your life or some bitch, get rid. Because life's too short to live with second best for you. But how many have got the bottle? I can't. I've got too much invested in this house. I can't afford. You can't afford not to. Because it's a pursuit. Our life, it has to be a pursuit of happiness. It's either the pursuit of happiness or the putting up with pain. You see, that's the only reason we do anything. The only reason, I'm going to give you an example. Okay, I'm going to clean my teeth. There we are. That's an example of me doing something. I don't particularly get a great thrill out of cleaning my teeth. I find it decidedly inconvenient. I'm not really motivated to do it, but I do it. It's not something I get excited about doing. But I know I have to do it. Because the only reason we do things, folks, is for two reasons in life. One is for the avoidance of pain, and the other is for gaining pleasure. Now think about that, the avoidance of pain and gaining pleasure. So let's just think about this. Oh crap, I've got to wash my car. It's looking a right state. Well, were you avoiding pain or pleasure? Well, you're getting, if it's a nice car and you make it nice by washing it, you'll get the approbation and praise of people looking at it, and it'll make you feel proud of your car. You'll drive around in a big head. Or you could be avoiding the pain of letting you leave it, it's all right, leave it. I'll wash it next week, leave it. And then you wash it, and then you'll see the salt has corroded the paintwork. So you would wash it regularly to get the salt off, because you're having to avoid the pain of a respray or lowering the value of your car. It makes sense, but think about anything you do in your life. Why do you iron your clothes? You don't have to. You can wash them and let them dry and put them on. But you dry. Do you know why you do it? Why do you iron your clothes? Because you want to look smart. Because you know that you can avoid the pain of people taking the piss out of you looking like a piece of shit. So I should say SH1T. But we learn these things, and how do we learn? Have you ever considered how you learn things? They do say that repetition is the mother of skill. Well, that's true. I know. I played the piano. And if I don't play for ages and ages and ages, I'm crap at it for a couple of hours. But then the old songs come back. I can remember the chords. I can remember the little licks and the timings. And oh yeah, and then I can't play for ages for whatever reason. Because I'm not around a piano, or, you know, sometimes I just don't carry the thing around on my back. And I miss it. I feel like I'm missing an arm if I can't play. It's in me. I was never forced to play as a child, but I loved every second of it, and I still do. I don't play professionally, I play for me, and I don't play for other people. Other people like it, it's bloody marvellous. But do you think I like the piano lessons? Not really. Not when my friends are out there playing. And I couldn't go out because I was expecting the piano teacher. No, but we have to sacrifice in the short term to gain in the long term. How is it then do we learn things? Because the way we learn things is all the same. For every different human being in the world, the way we learn is the same. There's a guy called Maslow, and he said that every bit of learning we do has stages. And I'll give you an example. Okay. If a young 7-year-old gets a bicycle, no, let's say a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old gets a new bicycle, okay, for his birthday. It's a racing bike. It's a Rally Hustler. I remember that because I had one. I was a little bit disappointed it didn't have derailleur gears, the ones that make a noise when you change around. I had one of the 1, 2, 3 gears. I didn't have one of the 5 or 10 gear bikes. So that was the only fly in the armour. A little bit. I didn't want to be an ingrate though, but still a racing bike. My first racing bike. I was delighted most of the time, and a spoilt brat. And it's one of the few things that I didn't have a hand-me-down in our family. But how do we learn then? Well, this kid, let's say it's you, gets a bicycle. A newer, bigger bicycle for you, just for you on your birthday, and you're delighted. And your little brother is watching from the sidelines as you get on it and cycle around with a smile on your face, and the parents are watching. Yay! Do you like it? Oh yeah. And off you go. Well, your little brother will get on your old bike and promptly fall off and hurt himself. What's happened? Well, apart from the obvious. Because obviously you're flying around on your bike and your little brother got on his bike, or the bike he's inherited, fallen straight off and really hurt himself. But that's nothing new, because everything we try for the first time, it's like learning a piano. You can barely split your mind in half to the left hand and the right hand and all these squiggles on the paper. It's a nightmare. We have to consciously, and that's the word, consciously, it's hard work. So what made the little kid fall off the bike. Well, Maslow, the psychologist, said we all go through stages of learning, and it's the same for every human being. The reason that child fell off the bike after watching his brother ride a bike successfully was that the child didn't know he couldn't do it. Stage 1. He thought he could just get on a bike and do it, and he soon learned, didn't he? He fell off. See, before he got on the bike, he didn't know he couldn't do it. So it is unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. He didn't know he couldn't do it. Fair cop, gov. But the next time the little kid got on it, he knew he couldn't do it, but he persisted and started to go downhill. He was doing it, but the problem is then he was having such a hard time. He didn't get any joy out of it because he had to concentrate so much, wobbling about, and that's if he hasn't got stabilizers. Yeah, he's doing it, but he has to think bloody hard to do it. That's stage 2. He's now become consciously competent. He's competent because he's thinking about it this time. Brave soul that he is. The best stage is yet to come. Is that now the kid is so experienced, he can do it without thinking about it. He is now competent and he's not thinking about it, which means he's unconsciously competent. He's got rid of his brain now. It's his competence. He doesn't have to think about it anymore. So, unconsciously incompetent, consciously competent, consciously incompetent, he knows he can't do it. Then he gets on and goes for it, and now he's consciously competent because he struggles to start to do it. And finally, he can do it without thinking now, cocky. He's unconsciously competent. No matter what you do in your life, in learning a new skill, is exactly the same for all of us. And that's what Maslow said. The stages of learning is the same. It's just that some people can jump from one phase to another a lot quicker than others. Some people are very fast adopters, going from one stage to another. My God, he's gifted. The boy's gifted, or the girl's gifted. Absolutely true, but we still have to, even they, the protégés, have to go through this. They just go through it a hell of a lot quicker than the average Joe. Well, so whenever you find yourself at a bit of a spare time and you drift off into your Walter Mitty moment, I'd be curious to know what you would drift off into doing if you could, if your academic ability is not holding you back and no money is not holding you, lack of money is not holding you back. I'd like to know what you would do if you have your time again and there was nothing holding you back. Answers underneath. That'd be fascinating for me to read. Because, well, am I a bit odd, wanted to be a hired hand? I don't think so, because I think I'd be doing the world a favour to delete some people off this planet for the benefit of others. You see, even if I were to assassinate just one, and that person couldn't then go on to abuse a child or rape someone or hurt someone or kill someone, I've done my duty. And you know, England expects everyone to do their duty. But it is my fantasy, and I have no real need to carry it out. I don't have the skill sets. In my own dreams, I do. Well, watch this film called What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and you'll understand what I'm saying. Our life and what we perceive it to be and make of it, for the most part, is lived within our heads. Think about that consciously. competent ways.